This 2012 Ford Edge is back. I just did a video on this. It had some screwy ABS problem. Makes some horrible noise in the front end. Sounds like a bad wheel bearing, but it's not. I had it up in the air last time it was here, and it was making noise out of the transfer case. So I'll be putting one of these things in. We get to see how this goes. They call it a PTO or a PTU, or it's a damn transfer case. So whatever. Yeah, this should be an interesting one. We'll see. Got a little drip on the floor. Oh, it's starting to puke pretty good. Oh yeah. Wow. That thing got really bad since I looked at it last week. First thing I'm going to do is try to get this right side axle out of here. The left side can stay in. This is a 35 millimeter. And I got a 24 millimeter here. And the other side's a 19. I don't want to stretch on these wires. Just take a pair of pliers and squish this in and it pops out. There's a 10 millimeter on this brake line. There's a little hanger here. Now down in here, inside the shaft, I got two bolts right there I got to try to get at. I'm just going to use a 3-foot extension and a 13 millimeter. Hopefully this thing will just come right out. And drip all over the floor. I'm going to get this exhaust off next. They cheaped out on this really bad. This is the only union on the whole thing, and I'm going to destroy it to get it apart. My only other option is to take it all out in one piece, the whole shot, because there's no other place to unbolt this. They totally cheaped out on this. So yeah, I'm just going to destroy this. This does have a spot weld on it. Usually you can just wiggle these back and forth and bust this weld off. I'm going to use an air hammer. I got to strap this exhaust up too. There's no hangers behind here, so I'm going to put a strap under here before I take it all the way off. These are 15 millimeters too. Try to get these out without breaking anything. I'm going to deal with this drive shaft next. I put the car in neutral so the shaft can turn. The carriers, there's a carrier bearing. These are 15 millimeter and those are 13s. There's 4 on each end. I'm going to get this dog bone off of here next. 10 millimeters on this heat shield. 15 millimeter here. There's a 15 here. I got an extension and a wobble on here. It should get it out. This is an 18 millimeter. And one more 15. All these bolts have Loctite on them too, so you're going to have a fair of a time getting this stuff off if you got to do it by hand. I guess next on my list is going to be this catalytic converter. Got to find a connector somewhere. Yeah, it's buried real good, just like a lot of other Fords. They put these in the dumbest places. Their connector's in a really bad spot. Fucking assholes. Looks like I got 4 of these to try to get out. 15 millimeters. Got a wobble on this. Money. I got this bracket I'm going to take off next. These are all 13 millimeters. I'm going to disconnect the steering shaft next, so I always do this as a safety precaution. I put a bungee cord around the steering wheel because I don't want it to turn, because if this thing turns, you can wreck your clock spring. So it's got to be put back in the same position. It can't be 180 off. So I just make sure that the steering wheel is straight and the wheels are straight forward. This steering shaft bolt is a 10 millimeter. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to support the back of this cradle. Looks like we got some more 15s. And these here are 21 millimeter. There's two more on each side. Right here. There's a hole in the lower control arm, so you can get at it with an extension. Get those out on both sides. 21 millimeters. Now I suppose I'm going to let this down just for fun and see how much room it gives me. Not nearly as much as I want. I probably don't need this support jack because these studs hold it in really well because they don't bend. I actually put a 2x4 in here and pried it down just a little more. I don't want to pop it all the way out, but I think that's about as much room as I can get without taking this cradle out. Next thing I got to do, there's a couple bolts way back in here. Two 13 millimeters for the transfer case. I got to get those out, and then there's three more. There's 1, 2, and then there's one more way up here somewhere, I think. Yeah, right there. So there's a total of 5 bolts. These are 15 millimeter. There's a power steering line in my way. I'm going to bend it just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and let that drool for a bunch. Take a break. I don't like all this mess. I let this thing drip overnight. Probably dripped out about 1/4 to a transmission fluid. It's still dripping. Okay, I'm scared. Let's see if this thing wants to come out of here. Oh yeah, there it is. There's a little O-ring that's on the inside of this transfer case. So you want to make sure that's on there and it doesn't fall out. I'm going to start all these bolts before I tighten them up. Yeah, there's no alignment pins or anything on this, so you just got to kind of wiggle this thing around to get these bolts started. It's kind of lame, but whatever. Cheap shit, Ford shit. I was going to fill this thing up full of gear oil. Just take this plug out. It's a 3/8, but there's already gear oil in this thing. That's why it said this side up on the box, I'm sure. Wow, yeah, that's already full of oil. I don't have to put any gear oil in it. I'm glad nobody tipped this thing upside down, because if they did, the vent hole on the top, it would have just leaked all over the place. People aren't even supposed to ship stuff like this. That's amazing. Yeah, this is just a regular 3/8 square head. Don't want to melt the dog bone. Actually, maybe I do. Give me my shit. I'm going to put this converter on next. On these, it requires a gasket, but I left the one that was on there. It's like an O-ring, and it's really expensive. And well, I got this stuff laying around. This is good stuff. So I just put a little bit of that on there, so I don't have to buy a new gasket. It works. Works very well, actually. Same thing with this gasket here. It's metal. So I just pasted some stuff on that too. Just a little bit. That way I don't have to buy a gasket. This is just a 2 1/4 inch muffler clamp I'm putting on here. Doesn't need to be too ridiculously tight. It should stay on. Hopefully it won't leak. The way to check the fluid is there's the cap right there. Just turn it counterclockwise and pull it out. There's your dipstick. You want to leave this thing running. In park is fine, and it's got to be at least 160 degrees. The transmission, it's got to be hot. So yeah, 120, 160 degrees, somewhere around there. You know, operating temperature. That's about what they call it. And yeah, and that's it.